family-based intervention, and we're right up the road at Hillcrest LBJ. And man, this is our time to do whatever we can. And I collaborated to bring just a mini presentation to parents and teachers on how to talk to your children about something really difficult. And here we are again. And so, back in October, the way I approached this was I led with a message for how to talk to your children about it and strategies for your children. And this time I'm leading with strategies for us, strategies for parents and for adults. We will talk about a message that, a way that you could describe this to kids, but there's something different about this one. And I spent some time thinking about it because, like a tornado, this was unexpected. It does feel unprecedented, unbelievable, really. We want to use all of our U words at once. It came on like a tornado, came on really suddenly. It's devastating. It's unique and varied in its impact. Each person has a different story, despite the fact that we're all going through the same pandemic. There's going to be aftermath. There already is aftermath, both financial and otherwise. And so what's the critical difference here? And in thinking about it, the difference in large part is the duration. I think that's one of the pieces. A tornado is going to hit and be gone in under an hour, and for many people in under 2 or 3 minutes. This is requiring a sustained, like an endurance, an emotional endurance, where things are just continuing to happen, continuing to unfold. Every day there's new and more upsetting information, and we're just having to tolerate discomfort and anxiety in an ongoing fashion without knowing when we will get a break from it. And so there's no foreseeable end to it right now. We know there will be an end, but there's not one that's scheduled or known. And so the thoughts and strategies that we're going to talk about tonight aren't going to change our circumstances, but hopefully they'll bring into perspective. They'll help us kind of be mindful of our perspective. And I'm hopeful that what we can talk about tonight will encourage us to try on some of our old coping strategies that we might not have used in a while, or to try on some new ones, but to leave with some couple of constructive things to think about. Before we get started, I want to speak about the fact that what Tara's already mentioned, that part of what makes this, in large part, I think what makes this so incredibly difficult is the anxiety, our universal and our, in a sense, our irreducible anxiety about uncertainty, anxiety about the unknown. And people handle that in all different number of ways. And so on one end of the spectrum, you might have people who say, you know what, this is really not that big of a deal. Everybody's overreacting. It's not as big of a deal as we think it is. Go to the grocery store, get together with friends. It's fine. This is people making a mountain out of something that's not. It's fine. It's fine. In this circumstance, when we know what we know, while that is a coping strategy for anxiety, it's a maladaptive one and a destructive one. It's denial. And that's one of the ways that we either consciously or unconsciously cope with anxiety. The people who take that approach are the ones who are on some level saying, this is so anxiety producing that I can't even handle it. And I'm going to tell myself that there's nothing here to worry about because I can't grapple with the severity of what this is. On the other end of this, and then of course those people can engage in behaviors that can be destructive and harmful, right, due to the power of that denial. And on the other end of the spectrum, we can have people who become consumed by their thoughts about it, consumed by the anxiety, and every minute of the day is filled with obsessing about it and thinking about it incessantly. Somewhere in the middle, we can have people who develop, who just kind of latch on to invented certainty of, well, we're going to be back in a month. We're going to be back in a month, and it has to be normal by then, right? It has to. It can't get worse than it is right now. It just can't. Again, those are beliefs that are fabricated and not necessarily truthful. So what we need to do, our goal in all of this, is to learn to live with this knowledge of uncertainty without becoming so consumed by it that we can't enjoy our lives. And so, uncertainty is all around us, always has been. It was there yesterday. It was there a month ago. It's there today. It's going to be always with us. Looking at is that they have changed on a dime, and that will always continue to be the case. So uncertainty is universal. The goal is that we find a way to live with it and to tolerate it, and that we're not paralyzed by it. And that's each of our own unique challenges. So individually and collectively, we have to use our skills. We have to use our competence, our judgment, our foresight, our organization, our creativity. We have to harness all of these things to learn, to prepare, to protect ourselves and our children. And we need to use these skills to be as thoughtful as we can be and as prepared as we can be to respond to the unexpected. So we need to do the best we can, and doing our best is the best we can do. That's what we ask of ourselves in times like this. So let's talk. And as Tara said, this is hard. This is hard. If at some point you're looking up and you're thinking, I'm feeling terribly anxious, it's not that you're necessarily doing anything wrong. This is anxiety producing and it's difficult. You're in phenomenal company. You could be doing some things that you might want to change or do differently. So if you're feeling really anxious, there could be some things that you could change, but you're in good company. And it's important to remember during times like this, the power of social support. We are a smart, loving, and creative bunch of people. I know that to be true at the J. I know that to be true beyond this amazing community that we have at the J. So we've got great power when we can harness it and use it for good. So I think the challenge is finding a way to put our energy behind our constructive efforts as compared with just placing all that energy behind our worries that just ruminate and run in our minds. Let's talk 3 key strategies that I think would be helpful. The first is to be, so strategy number 1, the first is to be intentional in your intake of information. We obviously need to stay informed during this time, but there's a significant difference between staying informed and just binging on all of the information that's out there and available to us. So we know that facts can help manage anxiety, especially if we use those facts to help us think more realistically. The question is, and Tara, I'm getting some feedback. I just want to check in. I'm getting some feedback from some of the microphones. I don't know if certain people are perhaps not muted, but maybe do a cruise.
Yeah, I think I just figured it out. So I muted them.
Awesome. I'm using my power of focusing, but that will be helpful.
It is hard. It's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the question is, where do you get your facts? And when do you get them? And so develop a strategy that works for you. It might be different from person to person. It will be different. But what is your strategy for intentionally intaking information, right? Think about it like food. Some people like to eat 3 meals a day. Other people eat 5 meals or do small snacks. Some people are grazers. They like to snack. There's no right or wrong way. Just figure out what works for you so that you are not literally eating all day, because we know that that's not functional and it makes it hard for you to do lots of the other things in your life that you need to do. To this end, I think it's helpful to limit screen time. I've talked to both family members and patients, and they're like, I can't even go on Facebook or go on Instagram without getting completely like slaughtered with information. And that's, frankly speaking, not helpful. So if you decide you just come up with a plan, and maybe your plan is, I will check CBC 1 time per day, between the hours of 4 and 7, and I will, read 2 articles in the New York Times or in the Dallas Morning News or whatever it might be. Right? But pick a way where you are narrowing that in and being intentional and not just binging on all that comes. Once you find your helpful information and your facts, and again, that might come from a website, it might come from a trusted medical professional who's doing all of the sorting through and the curating for you. But once you find that, your second strategy is to focus on key facts and use realistic thinking. And so, for example, I think a really lovely fact that we've seen in a number of different places is that children, with respect to this virus, children are faring relatively well. Many of them are asymptomatic. We're not seeing lots for children who have this virus. So children are faring relatively well. That's a fact that you can hold on to that has yet to be disputed and can really do a lot to lower anxiety. You could also think about a fact that has to pertain to your own situation. You could say something like, I am practicing good hand washing hygiene. If that's true and it's factual, then tell yourself that. Remind yourself, I am doing what I can. I am doing what I can. Our family is taking reasonable measures to do what we can. So whether it's a fact about the world or about this virus, or whether it's a fact about you or your experience or a fact about your loved ones, hold in mind your facts and rehearse those to yourself. Like burn them into your brains, say them over and over again. Shameless plug for Mighty Moose, my co-authored children's picture book. Find your Mighty Moose and get him to bark loud, right? There's a ton of fret that's coming out through social media, through all different outlets, remembering the media is a for-profit business. Fact. Thoughts like that help you put in perspective all of that. So you want to find your Mighty Moose, get him to bark loud, and when you listen to your Mighty Moose, as we say in the book, you feel braver, calmer, and stronger. Third fact, once you've been intentional in your input of information, chosen the facts and the realistic thoughts that you will remind yourself of and work to think on a regular basis, then distract. Get really distracted. I know that this one's hard because right now, many of our preferred versions of distraction are not available to us. But think about what you can do. Maybe you can go for a walk outside. We saw those high points of people being able to get outside, go outside. Maybe you take your dog for a walk, play with your children. That can be distracting in a happy way if they're in a great mood. It can be distracting in a frustrating way if they're being difficult, but play with your children. Read a good book, turn off your screen and get to that book that you just haven't had time to get to. Cook, feed your family, do normal things. Just tonight, and again, like just relish in the normal. We have to continue in doing the normal things. There's no need to feel guilty about doing that. Try to continue the normal pieces that you can. Just tonight, I went to change it. I went to go to the bathroom and I noticed that I happen to like the toilet paper to come over the top, not to come underneath, right? And so, yep, I'm seeing some nods, right? Thank you for that. And the toilet paper was coming from underneath on the roll. And I thought, there's this moment of what's the point? I mean, the mayhem, what's the point? And then I thought, no, this is something I can control. I will fix that toilet paper roll and I will put it back on the top. And just spending those few moments doing something that brings normalcy to your life, that reminds you, yep, we're still doing it. We're still in it. We're doing all the things and we're moving ahead is, I think, a really powerful tool. Let's talk for a second about how to talk with children about this, and then I'm going to end by sharing some helpful resources. This was a tough one. I had to work really hard to come up with a message that felt, interestingly, crafting a tornado message felt easier for me than crafting a message about this. Again, I'm going to go back to all those strategies I shared before where you want to customize, you want to let your child lead, you want to let them tell you how much they know, and you do not want to come in with too much information. But in general, if you're looking for a template for what you can then modify for your child, I think it would go something like this. When they're starting to, and don't roll the message out until you need to. Let me start there. All the times that this week our son has been like, hey, can we go to the park? Hey, like tonight he wanted to go to the park. And my answer was, no, because it's actually too close to dinner time. It's time for us to sit down and have dinner. That was an opportunity for me to roll out this whole virus message, but I don't need to. And when he's like, hey, can I go back to school? Nope, it's spring break week. We're on spring break. Again, kick that can down the road until you need to roll out the message. Cling to all the normalcy. It's dinner time. It's spring break week. That's not something we can do right now. But then when you do hit a wall and you recognize, okay, now it's time. He's asked 8 times to go to the park and we're outside of spring break and we're not going back to school and I got to give him an answer. That's the point at which I think it would look something like this. You know what? a lot of people are sick right now. And those sick people are staying home to get well and to take care of their bodies. Some people, a lot of people who are not sick are also staying home. And this is stay well. And it also helps the people who are sick have the space and time and resources to get better. So, really, most people are staying home right now and focusing on being well. After this passes, we will get back to normal. We'll go back to school. We'll see our friends again. We'll go to the park again. Some things might look a little different, but with time, we'll be fine. And I genuinely believe that. It may look different, but we will be fine. And that's what we need to channel, and it's what we need to share with our children. Make it ordinary to the degree that you can. So let's end with talking about some helpful resources. Gosh, there are so many out there. I mean, they're literally like flooding. They are flooding onto social media. You're going to find them in a lot of places. I'm going to talk about just two that we've included on our website that you guys can access. Our website is www.therapydallas.com. And if you go to /share, and I think Tara is going to share this link at some point, but therapydallas.com/share, you will see right on that page. The first one is this amazing new app that thankfully rolled out like today or yesterday, I'm sure because of the demand for it, called Imagine Action. And so the website is imagineaction.stanford.edu. And these are, it's Imagine Action. It's a colleague of mine from Stanford who has, in conjunction with Stanford, rolled these resources out. And it refers to a skill that uses our natural ability to focus and to be absorbed in experiences to help us feel better in some way. It's part imagination because it's something you do in your brain and using our really creative skills and our natural ability, but it's also part action because it literally changes your experience in your body and changes how you feel. And so another name for this is technically self-hypnosis. So these are little audio clips that are 15 to 25 minutes in length. And you'll see them, like the graphics are great. You can just hop on the website, title them, play them on your phone, on your laptop. They're titled things like, I want to be more relaxed. I want to feel okay, not knowing exactly what will happen next. I want to be less anxious. I want to be able to sleep. Those are just 4 of the 10 that are available. So getting online, finding these kinds of resources that are evidence-based, that you can use, that your child can use to slow yourself down and to use helpful skills. Another that I think is really helpful that we actually did with our son this morning after I heard about it yesterday is an interesting activity with water, pepper, and soap. I don't know if any of you guys have seen this. I'm seeing some nods. I included a link to it on our website where you get, a plate, you fill it with water, you sprinkle pepper all over it, and you talk about how you can talk about it in whatever language you want. The sample that I've linked to, she's using pepper as the virus. If you're not ready to introduce that language, you can just say, these are like germs, or this is like dirt, where you're ready to meet your child. And you say, put your finger in the dirt. And so it's a plate with water and pepper all over it. And when you stick your finger in it, your child is going to pull out a finger and it's going to have pepper flakes on it. And you say, oh yeah, see, there's dirt on that. Let me wipe off your finger. And now let's dip your finger in some dish soap. And now try again. Put your finger back in the middle of the plate. And like magic, I mean, I saw the video, but I still had to do it for myself to be like, what? That's crazy. When you touch the middle of the plate, the pepper shoots to the sides of the plate. And it's a way of teaching kids soap repels dirt. Like it's not a literal translation for how the virus works, but it's a way to teach kids and to give them a visual. This is why it's important for us to wash our hands when blank. Again, there's a lot of sort of OCD generation that's happening through media and through news and well-intended resources that are telling you to wash your hands 18 times a day. be mindful when you roll this out that you are again teaching practical, reasonable measures to practice good hygiene. And so this is a good way to say, this is why we wash our hands after we come in from playing outside, or before we eat, or after we use the restroom. Those, if you're on that page of our website and you hop over to the right column, there's some blue text that says, if you would like to sign up for announcements, we are going to be, these resources are plentiful. And so if you would like to sign up for a newsletter where we will send not an overwhelming amount, but a thoughtfully curated selection of resources, you're welcome to do that. Just click the little button that has to do with practice announcements, and that's the way we're going to be sending information. But we'll also aim to add it to the website. So again, I think Tara will probably have that link. All of that said, I want everybody here to give yourselves a pat on the back for logging in tonight and for being here and being a part of this discussion. It's been I don't know about y'all, but these are long days. These are long days. I saw just before I logged on, a close friend of mine sent me a comic that was in the Dallas Morning News that she said thought most captured the day. And it had a mom like hunkered down on her laptop next to the washer dryer. And the kids are like popping their head being like, Mom, what are you doing hiding in the laundry room? And she's like, I'm on a call. I have a deadline. Go ask your dad. And they're like, Dad's on a conference call in the bathroom. We're hungry. And she's like, eat some candy. And they're like, we want to go back to school. Like, these are long days. These are long days, and longer. The smaller your house is and the more kids you've got and the fewer resources you have in terms of bodies and distractions and all of that. So for you guys to have the days that you're having and then to say, I'm going to give more time to come tonight to be part of this community, to connect, to support, and to try to adopt some new things to try, which might be hard because they're different from what I'm doing, deserves applause and is a brave thing to do. So thank you. That said, I think we should all give a toast to ourselves and to one another again. Thank you for being here tonight, and let's field some questions. Cheers. Mm-hmm.
So first of all, Kristen, that was great information. Even for me, after I've hearing it from you several times, it reminds me of things. And let's go ahead and write some questions in the chat. And while you're doing that, there was two things I wanted you to address. One, and if you can talk about when they do have the disappointments, because they are about reflecting their feelings. And the second thing is only answering what they ask. Can you kind of touch on those 2 points? And then I'll start looking at questions while you're doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So one really critical skill to use when kids are having any emotion, to be honest, big emotions, small and particularly big ones, but small ones too, ones that feel positive, emotions that are negative. We can even challenge the notion of negative emotions. All emotions are simply emotions, and even the negative ones have meaning to them and utility to them. So whenever kids are really disappointed, for example, this is a big one. I think our job as parents and caregivers is not to protect children from disappointment, but to help them navigate it gracefully and thoughtfully. And it is far easier to teach tolerance for and acceptance of disappointment in young children than it is in 30 and 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds. So the time is now. I love a phrase by one of my favorite authors, Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. They talk about how when you are trying to survive, you being like the parent, when you are trying to survive, chances are it's an opportunity for your child to thrive. So whenever you're like tearing out your hair going, oh my God, your child this is often an opportunity. And so if they're really struggling with disappointment, reflect that. You want to say it, you want to label it. Oh, I see how disappointed you are that we cannot go to the park right now. I see how sad you are. I see how frustrated you are. I see how much you really wish we could go to the park. And then what I like is instead of saying but, because then it kind of negates everything that you had on the first half of that sentence, saying at the same time, right now we can't go to the park. And you can either provide that explanation or not, but you just get to say, for now, we can't go to the park. We can do X or we can do Y. Which of those do you choose? And so you're reflecting the disappointment and teaching this feeling that you have inside of you. That's disappointment. And at the same time, it doesn't change our circumstances. It is. I know it's hard. And sometimes you can just like not even offer the choices. Just let that be. If you feel that you want to try to offer a redirect, we could play trains indoors, or we can go do cycling, or we can, but using that as a teaching moment to help them internalize what that feeling is and recognize that while there are some things they can do to manage it or lessen it, it may be there for a while. And it may feel hard and sad that we can't go to the park for a while. If, for example, you're choosing, I'm using the park because, you know, kids from all over can end up being there and then transmitting the virus. There may be people here who are perfectly comfortable going to the park, and no judgment there. The other question was related to her. What was the other one? Other question?
The other one was about sharing information. When the kids ask questions, sometimes we overshare. It was about that. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So because we have more of a propensity, ability, and tendency to kind of binge on all of the information out there, we have like a ton in our head, and way more than young children need, for sure. And so you want to start at their starting point. And the only way you know their starting point is by saying, like, and you can buy yourself time. I am so glad that you asked me that question. It sounds like you've been curious about that. Again, reflect the feeling. Tell me what you know about that. What is it that you know? What have you heard? And then blah, 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 they tell you, oh, interesting. Where did you hear that? Or how did you learn that? Try to figure out where they're getting their information, what it involves. And then, what questions do you think you have about that? And maybe they have specific questions. Answer the question. Don't go further. I think about, picture yourself being in court, and when you get cross-examined and someone says, Ms. So-and-so, do you know the date? Do you know today's date? Yes, I know today's date. I don't have to give you what it is. You didn't ask me that. You just asked me if I knew it, right? So start to think like that. Don't go farther than you need to go. And remember that your child's brain simply can't process all of the information that you have. If you do need to buy yourself time, you have a moment that you think, I do not know how I want to answer that. I want to consult with my co-parent or a teacher or someone else. You could say, oh, that is a great question. I am so glad that you asked. And I want to make sure that I give you a really good answer to that. Let me get back to you on that one. And then you do need to get back to them on that one. Hold your word, but it gives you just a little bit of breathing space to collect yourself, to think about what you want to say or what you want to share, or to collaborate with a co-parent or another teacher so that you're sending a same and similar message. But kids need way less than what we need. And if while you're talking, they're like, I'm going to go play Legos, and they disappear, done. Do not chase them down and share more. Do not be like, oh, no, let me just, stay right here. We're talking about this. That's your child's way of saying, too much. I'm up to here. I've had what I can have, and I'm going to go away. And so for what it's worth, this is the same way we approach the entire topic and questions about sex. You have a lot more information than your 3 or 4-year-old needs to know about sex. So you're just going to roll out little pieces as they are needed. And sometimes you'll say, that's a great question. We'll talk about that when you're older. So also don't feel as if you have to be answering all the questions that are asked. You can absolutely say, great question. That's not one that I choose to answer right now. But if you have others, let's talk about others. We'll answer those questions later. Mm-hmm. You're in charge of what, again, much like you were being intentional about what you take in, be intentional about what you enable your children to take in, whether it's from you or from other sources of news or things that are turned on in the house.
Great. Thank you. So a couple good questions coming in. We've had, this is not related, but I just want to say this. We've had some questions about tuition. It's a little side note, but I encourage everyone who has questions about tuition to reach out to Artie, who's our CEO, and I can put his email in your chat. We're not going to digress onto that tonight, though I know that's a stressor and a question for everyone. So I just kind of wanted to address the elephant in the room. But some questions about the kids. So for parents working from home, which a lot of us are, or even if we're not, do you have any tips on how to help the children learn to play independently, or how to get them to do some things independently when they're not used to having to do that?
Yeah. Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. Okay. So what I would probably do is set up certain parameters that feel observable and somewhat predictable, like green, yellow, and red construction paper. And you could make a stoplight, for example, that you craft with your child and you put on your door. And when you're behind the door working, or you can come up with a system, but this is, in a hallway or wherever it might be, if it's a time during which you're okay with them coming in and interrupting, because some of our work can be interrupted. Granted, we're not going to be as efficient, but some of it is not so critical that it can't be interrupted. Then the green light might be on. If it's yellow, you might say, when it's yellow, I need you to come in very quietly. You can come in quietly and tap on my leg or on my shoulder, and I will either answer your question and talk with you, or I might say, not yet, a little bit later. A red light means, please don't come in right now. You can put a toy outside the door so that when I look over at the door, I see that you are hoping to find me and that my light was red, but I will be taking breaks and I will come out and find you. So my first thought is to develop parameters there so that it's not just this like all day long, it's open, it's closed. I have no idea what the rules are here, whether I can interrupt or not interrupt. You build some sort of parameter around that. Then what I would think about is coming up with and I'm like shooting from the hip. We're doing this real time, but I'm thinking about this stuff. I would think about coming up with some novel and very distracting activities, because novel things are going to help with, grasping attention more readily. And I would think about doing a token economy. Yes, good one. I would think about doing, my husband's cueing me with additional good advice, good ideas. I would think about a token economy, which is like a little mini star chart. And so let's say you're getting ready to get on a call and you were like, ooh, this is 10 minutes. I really need to be on this call. Wouldn't we love it if all of our critical calls were only 10 minutes? But you could say, okay, my light's going to be red, and it's going to be red for, a little bit of time. If you can, and again, you want to positively reinforce adaptive strategies. So I'm not saying I'm going to reward you for not coming in. I am going to reward you for playing independently. I'm going to reward you for keeping your body inside the magic force field that is the playroom. Pretend that these doors are, are magically closed and you can stay and play with anything you choose inside this playroom. If you can stay in this playroom while I'm on my call, then, we will get to, and then you come up with some sort of reward, whether it's, being able to do a thing outside that your child has wanted to do, whether he's been asking for a certain dessert that normally you wouldn't go to the trouble of making, but you'll do it, some sort of experience or privilege that wouldn't also otherwise be garnered. And so coming up with something where you dangle carrots to get the behavior that you want, as compared with punishing if they break the rules. And then what we know, if you are trying to, like, let's say you're on that 10-minute call, again, this varies from child to child, but at like minute 5, some kids respond really well to your popping out of the room and going, good job. You're like, you're doing well. And then going back into your room, because it helps them be like, I'm positively reinforced. I can do more of this. Some kids get derailed and want to talk to you right then and there. It just depends on your child. But I would do a combination of structuring the time that you are truly genuinely unavailable with rewarding for adaptive playing, independence, quiet, whatever it is that you're asking them to do in like small manageable chunks. The third strategy is to think about, again, coming up with a way where your child gets to choose what they do. So we found these amazing, I should put these on our website. We found these great magnets that stick to the front of our fridge that we grab a couple that show different activities. And so it's a way where you can help your child say, okay, I'm going to be in the office right now. let's pick which of your activities you want to do. They get to choose, they commit, they stick it on the refrigerator in the time window that you are. And then, okay, great. When that's up, I'm going to come out. Then what would you like to do? And so having them sort of choose what they want to do. See, look, we've got like snack ones. Make them take a nap, right? That would work. No. We've got toy time and arts and crafts. And so coming up with things like this, where if you get their buy-in of this is the activity I am choosing to do, sometimes they can play a little bit more independently than you just leaving them completely unstructured and doing something you've asked them to do.
Those are all great advice. And I like the idea of proximity also, of playing nearby. Someone asked, what about a 1-year-old? And a 1-year-old's different because they have to have constant supervision. And so to me, 1-year-old is nap time is key time and things like that. Or as much as you can be in proximity, doing your work, being next to them. But it is hard. A 1-year-old is really hard. We had someone else ask about, they have some older children, which I know a lot of our families do, an 8 and a 5-year-old. And what about older kids who are persistent in wanting to know details about the virus and what's happening? And they keep they're not really satiated with the information. Any advice on that?
I think I would probably label that and talk about the process beneath it as compared with simply gratifying with answers. And so I think I would say something like, you were asking a lot of questions about this. And I've noticed that every day you have questions. And even when I give you answers, you keep asking, your brain comes up with more and new questions. I think this actually might mean that your brain is kind of worried about this. And your brain is thinking that if you can get enough answers, it might cause you to feel less worried. So first, let's applaud your brain for trying to come up with a way to help itself feel less worried. Like, good, your brain is smart. It's trying to find something to help you feel better. But I don't know if your brain's strategy is actually the best way to help you feel less worried. Let's think about some other things that might help you feel less worried, because some of these questions I can answer, but some I can't. And so instead of trying all the questions, let's try some other strategies, because I've given you the information that I think is as helpful as we can share. And a lot of those other questions, either I don't know the answer to, or I'm still thinking about it, or I just don't know that that's going to be helpful. So let's think about other ways to feel less worried. And then you basically provide kind of a mini coaching session on how to think factual thoughts that are calming, how to use distractions, how to calm your body down with relaxation and breathing, and to, for example, use some of those Imagine Action, for example, apps. Like, give your child other tools, because what they're trying to do is feel better. They're just trying it one way. And there's probably some better ways to do it.
That's great. Thank you. A couple more things. I'm going to combine a few of them into one question. So a lot of people are asking for ideas for much younger children. And I want you all to know that we are going to be sending a lot of those out next week from the teachers. And we are going to be actually sending things that you all can do, and videos and things like that are interactive ideas. So those are coming down the pike from us. So I want you to know that. So the rest of the questions are really asking about a schedule and how do you structure things in such unknown times. And a lot of us are letting our children do a lot more electronics and things like that, which I think we have to be okay with. How do you schedule it, and how do you get them off the electronics? And do you have any advice on just how to schedule the days?
Yes. So, I mean, within days, started seeing, like, on social media, COVID-19 schedules, and then there are like jokes about all of them, because parents would look at them and be like, seriously, like, whose child naps for 2 hours? That sounds great. I would love a 2-hour nap. Can I get one too? So there's obviously a ton of stuff out there that is proposed and readily accessible. I think it comes down to, again, what works for your family. And first, I would just give yourself permission to take some time, take a few days to fall into that. I mean, I think we're probably going to be using this strategy of scheduling for longer than what we would hope. And so if it takes a few days for us to figure out what that is, feel your way into that. Like Monday was my first day to offer, our practice is now offering teletherapy. We've transitioned everything to teletherapy. I would hated teletherapy before this week. And now I'm so pleased that it's a resource. But despite the fact that as a therapist, my job does not involve a whole lot of physical activity, like I'm sitting in a chair and listening and, working with somebody on a one-on-one basis, something about being behind the computer and being in a closed environment, at the end of the day, I felt like mush. I just felt so incredibly sedentary. And so I'm seeing some nods. Yes. And so I was over that and I thought, oh man, we're going to do a walk, and I got up at the end of the day, and even though it was going to make us late for dinner, I was like, let's mobilize. We got to get out of the house. Let's, get the stroller and get the ergo and let's go. And it was like mind amazing to get outside. So I thought, all right, that worked today. Let's try it again tomorrow. I don't get locked into, we're going to do this every day, because you just, again, I feel like we're in a phase right now where 2 days at a time, because stuff is literally coming out so fast and changing so quickly that it doesn't behoove us to plan, our immediate everyday lives much beyond the next 48 hours. And so what I would think about doing is, kind of being reflective about how your days have gone, and then thinking about, okay, how do I break this? Before a nap, between naps, between nap, dinner, and after dinner, break your day into pieces, and then be thoughtful about, what do I need to happen in each of those chunks? Do I need at least 2 outdoor times in a day? So I'm going to do 1 outdoor time in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. Do we need to have at least 1 period of like reading? If I'm going to use screen time, how do I spread it around instead of just like load it all up in one, as carrots and motivators for the things that are harder to do? And so again, if you're using screen time and your child is earning it, and you're using those math, you're like, every time you do this 3 times, you earn some screen time. You can, and again, those kinds of reward systems can be used with children as young as 2. We can figure out ways of thoughtfully placing the highly desirable things as motivators for getting some of the other stuff done that we need to get done. And so I get that probably feels pretty vague, but I think it's because we're each going to find what works for us, and we're going to take several days and even a couple weeks to figure out what actually does work for us. So I think it's about asking ourselves to continuously be flexible in whatever system we're trying.
That's good. And I agree with you. One thing, you may think you have the schedule set, and the next day it's going to be totally different. And I think having patience with ourselves and knowing that that's going to happen is really key, and that tomorrow's a new day and we'll try again and things like that. And then I'm going to just ask one more question, and then we're going to finish up. And it's related. We have someone asking related to food. When we're off schedule and we have children who have the kitchen accessible and food accessible, how would you recommend handling? Is there the same way, putting the food into the schedule and things like that to keep the children from wanting to eat and graze all day long?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's also worth just acknowledging and understanding that for many, food has a meaning, and it may be satiating hunger, but it also could be kind of a soothing mechanism, or something to do when you're bored, something that brings calm or familiarity during times that feel hard. The saying of eating your feelings, it can have some real significance. And so I think I would watch and see whether what you're seeing feels like it's unusual behavior that's different from what you're used to, seeing during a normal week off. But if your kids hit the pantry hard every time you're on spring break or whatever it might be, then perhaps there isn't a deeper meaning to it, and it's just how your kids like to snack and like to eat. I would put some parameters around this. And I think that's where you just label this, you say what it is, you say, you know what, this is a weird time and we're all going to be home together for way more time than we've ever been home together in the past. And we're going to come up with some rules and guidelines that help us live peacefully with one another, that help us keep the harmony in this house. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to sit down as a family and have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or there are going to be times during which you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can have 2 snacks. Gosh, and growing up, it's funny, all the things that you used to think back and you were cranky about when you were a child, and now as an adult, you look back and go, oh, I kind of get why that happened. We were in our world, we could have 2 snacks on any given day. One was a healthy snack and one was like a your choice snack. And so again, just creating some degree of structure around this. So, okay, yeah, you can have 2 snacks and one of them is from this list, which has 5 things on it that are relatively healthy and things feel good about. And then you can have a, eater's choice snack, kid's choice snack. And that might be the stuff that you're not as proud of, but that they love and that helps keep the peace and they're getting it anyway. And so let's just make sure that it's quantified and that there's some degree, like you can set parameters around, you need to come ask permission from me. Like if you're hungry, come talk to me. Or if you don't want to be asked about that, set those parameters too. But set up the guidelines and then, you can either reward healthy behavior around that, or there can be consequences for breaking that. It just comes down to whatever works best for your family.
That's great. And I want to just say a few other things. Candice, one of the moms, which she wrote in the chat, is she's a developmental psychologist professor. And she says the rules for screen time need to be adjusted in this kind of situation. The AAP recommends 2 hours or less a day, but a lot depends on how they're using the screens. So there are interactive tablet activities. They're a lot different from passive TV watching. And definitely it's okay to be flexible during this kind of time. It's God willing, a temporary thing, and to be flexible. And then I've seen a lot of our toddler teachers chiming in on schedules. So I encourage all of our toddler parents to use your teachers as a resource. They can share with you a typical schedule or things that might work that you can adapt at home. And also when you're with those of you us who are working from home, it's like sometimes we just have to stop and give our full attention for a little bit of time that will then give us some more time later. So really building in your mindset, like, okay, even if it's 20 minutes, I'm going to put it away. I'm going to go play outside, or I'm going to go do whatever, and then give your half attention again. And so really, like I said, next week, we're hoping to get you some more information and more ideas of things that you can do at home. Also facilitating some interactive group times. We don't know how it's going to work. It may be great. It may not. It may work really well for some children and not others. So we are going to be flexible and really try to do as much as we can. So first of all, Kristen, I want to thank you. You have given us so much information tonight, so many wonderful things to think about. And I know we're going to have more and more questions, and I will email out the resources and things like that. Also, I know that Kristen's practice is, you are taking new clients who are having stress in these kinds of times, right? So they can reach out to you for any of that. So Kristen, I really thank you for your time. It's really, really been helpful. And, people are saying we're all in this together and we're going to figure it out as we go and all of that. And we are, and that's one of the best things about being at the J and part of the school family. We're going to struggle. We're all struggling, but we're going to get through it together. And the last thing I'm going to say is please send us ideas and questions. If there's other get-togethers like this we want to have, or you have ideas of how we can be helpful to you during this time or to your children, please let us know. We are also, I see people asking, we are going to try to share this webinar recording. Kristen and I also talked about tentatively doing another webinar just like this on Thursday night that would be open to people outside of our school. So if you know people who might need to hear this, your friends, family, or you want to hear it again, we'll send out the information too, and we would love your help in getting other people to log in on Thursday night, because we can't hear these things enough. So everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight. Kristen, thank you again. We are the best school family ever. And yeah, it's really times like this that we really need to lean on each other. So everyone have a good night. Tomorrow is a new day. Don't forget self-care during this time, because we all we really need it. So, all right. So we'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much. And we'll see you all soon. Bye. Bye, everyone.